Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends.
Alright, sound speed, camera rolling. Go for it.
Welcome back to Chasing Legends. Before we get any further, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment if you have a comment or any questions. Visit our website, www.legendsofsuperstitionmountains.com. All kinds of stuff there as well. And visit any of our friends or anybody else out there in a number of different forums. So let's move on into today's story. Now, this story goes back shortly, probably within the year, about a year after we'd finished and the release of Legends, the TV program on History Channel. And I was contacted by an individual. His name was Michael Gonzalez. He was out of New Mexico. That's where he was born and grew up, but they had moved to Tucson for his high school years and some period of time to spend time with his grandparents. And then I think they moved back to New Mexico, and then they finally came back to Tucson. And yeah, it had, I wasn't sure, I knew the name Gonzalez. It's like, hey, okay, cool, you got a story. But he was like, when he came back, and they came back the second time to Arizona, they spent time with his grandmother. She passes away. And in that house, she was living with his parents at the time. And he was working as a landscaper on the weekends after she passed away. He was helping his dad go through his grandmother's stuff. I guess she kept everything. And one of the things he said she had was 5 or 6, 7 of these suitcases. And they weren't nice cases or trunks or anything. It was just old beat up suitcases. And they were expecting to find clothes or something. They were kind of heavy. And they started opening them, and they were just full of papers. He said there were letters, there were sketches. He had an uncle or a great uncle who did sketches, so she had saved all that stuff in them. There were newspaper clippings, there were grocery lists. He said it was just kind of a mix mash. It wasn't junk mail, that type of thing, or bills, but it was all this different correspondence and things she found interesting. And I guess she'd fill a suitcase up and then work on another one. And at the time when they were doing this, he told his dad, I want to take and set these aside. I want to go through them. Because he said there could be a lot of family history here. I think she was born after 1900. She died in her 90s. So he was thinking there could be some invaluable stuff concerning the family. He had zero interest of anything about the superstitions, treasure hunting, anything at this time. So he starts going through all this stuff, and he finds some knickknacks, a couple things. He said, like they went on a trip and there'd be a pair of salt and pepper shakers in the suitcase or something. And he said he found these little iron bars. They were about this long, about the skinniness of a finger. And he said he found those and thought they were odd because he couldn't figure out what they were. He asked his dad. His dad didn't know. He said he thought they were like lead weights or something because they looked like lead and grayish, real blackish but kind of grayish. So he was gathering all this stuff up, and he started going through and finding a bunch of letters. He said it was about 50-50. There was a lot of stuff in English, newspaper articles and stuff in some of the letters. There was older letters, and they'd be in Spanish. He said, unfortunately, a lot of it was faded. And additionally, while he spoke Spanish, he wasn't as well versed in reading and writing Spanish. So taking someone's bad handwriting and that type of thing, he was going through kind of see what they were. They'd be letters from different family members or friends that had moved back to Mexico. So he found it, and then he found it went back into his great-grandparents, a few letters and things from them. And finally, he came across a series of letters, and he said they were to kind of sitting there, and he was going through the stuff. And there was an individual who had done a lot of the sketches and done some drawings and some different things, and his name was Miguel Gonzalez. And Michael thought, oh, okay, maybe this is, a great uncle or someone and someone's namesake. And it was his grandfather's side. And he kind of was reading through it and noticed there was a lot of different things involved. So he started asking his parents about it. And his mom kind of knew more than his dad. Said, yeah, the family had lived up in Phoenix. And there'd been family from Mexico and different areas. Miguel had worked as something of a cowboy and a ranch hand on a citrus farm or something down in Mesa. And they said they were kind of aware of him. They'd met him, but they said, you know, he was just a family member. They were aware who it was. So going through these letters, and the letters seemed to be describing certain things and all. And he was kind of setting things aside. Well, about this time is when our show comes out. And when our show had come out, he went to go look for a book on the superstitions, completely unrelated to all this. And I can't remember what book he picked up. It was probably one of Jack Sanfelice's books or Thomas Glover's or something he was able to find. And he read the book and got more interested. And he started wondering about some of these directions and different things and these drawings. And he was looking at them, and he also got tied into the name Gonzalez. So he reached out to me because he figured, well, maybe if there's someone that knows something about the Superstition Mountains, some of the Gonzalez family activities, maybe this guy would do it. And then I told him I don't really know a familiar history, but I said there was Gonzalez's over a number of times, and I told him some different related stories from different books and different people about Gonzalez members. I told him there was actively, and at the time I found out much later how much more there was a Gonzalez involved in the superstitions more currently in their family. And I'm still not sure to this day if they're related. But he found that interesting and started to share with me. Said he had a number of these letters, and they seemed to be talking about something east of Phoenix. And his uncle was talking, it was something from the family, and they had been out there, and he wanted to get involved and track it down. He'd been there when he was a boy, and there was several little drawings. But the problem was the drawings were more like if you knew kind of where you were talking about, or you had some kind of general knowledge, like, hey, okay, we're sitting here, but what you need to do is go over here and here. There was no place names. There was nothing on them. I got to see those finally, and that was one of the things. He said he wanted to meet and show me some of this stuff. He didn't want anything photographed or copied. He just really wanted someone to verify and see what they thought. Now, not being able to read, write Spanish, I was going to be at a disadvantage because he said most of that was in Spanish. And a lot of it was really faded. He was actually, and I got to see his written translations. It would be part of a line, a sentence, and then there would be nothing, and then a few words, and then a nothing, and then a few more words, then a sentence or two, and nothing. It really had faded. I think most of it had been in pencil. But the handwriting was very distinct. It was more stylish, which we have to remember people used to take a lot more pride in their actual personal handwriting, and it was all kind of a cursive. And so being that and in Spanish, I saw what he meant is it was a lot more difficult to interpret, especially the fade out spots. So we're looking at it, and the first time I met him, it was just very brief, and he was trying to figure out where would this even be, because he said he couldn't put any of it together. He'd watched the show, he kind of got into, but he said he wasn't familiar, he'd never been out in the superstitions. So he did make a couple trips to Phoenix. The first time he showed me just a few things. I couldn't make much of it. He showed me his translations. I really didn't know what to think of any of it. So the second time he came up, he brought a couple other things. I think he realized I couldn't really read the Spanish, so it didn't really matter what he was showing me. And he showed me some more sketches and things. And I could tell they were, and I told him, I said, just the contour of it and what I was looking at, I said there was a few places you could put this into. And I told him one would be Peters Canyon, another might be Fish Creek Canyon up by the Salt River. I told him there are some specific canyons this fits more of. I said, I don't know geographically how super accurate it is because they're going by ground where they think how the canyons work. I said, I don't think they were working it off a map or anything else. It was a memory. And so we kind of looked at it, and then he said, why don't you check out these? And he brought these things out, and like I said, they were like this long. And this is when he showed them to me. He never had mentioned them before, these lead weights. And he set them down, and I was looking at them. And I picked them up. They were kind of heavy, and I was looking at it, and I said, have you had anybody look at these? And he said, no. And I kind of looked at him, and I said, they're not slag. I said, they seem purposely made. And I told him, I said, have you ever heard of finger bars? With the Mexican, Spanish, and I guess Anglos would as well. They'd make these holes, like finger holes, and then they would pour in the wet sand, and they would pour and use that as a mold to make these little finger bar gold. We usually see the more refined, squarish looking ones, box-like ones, but these were like kind of uneven, and I said, that's what this is reminding me of, is someone took a stick or a finger or something, poked it in the ground, then they poured this in there. And I said, you can see in it, you can see the sand and stuff, you can see where there are these little imperfections all over it. And I said, I think that's what this actually really is these are, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to guess. And I told him, it's kind of heavy, but I'm going to guess it's silver. And he went off, and then I heard from him, and he was pretty excited. Now, the reason he went through this stuff, because I was kind of curious, why would you go through 5-6 suitcases, all this stuff? Well, when he first started, he was finding every once in a while there'd be a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a couple ones. There was money from birthdays, anniversaries, different things, or different people would send his grandmother money to help out. He was making $200 or $300 per suitcase just going through this stuff. So he'd been going through the suitcases because it's like $200-$300. You'd find these dollar bills, 5s, 10s. So it made sense now. And then there was these trinkets and stuff, and he said he wasn't telling anybody else in the family, because he said, for going through all this stuff and kind of looking at the family history and trying to, he said, I didn't really get anywhere on stuff. I got names, but there was just a lot of blah, blah, blah in it. But except this one thing with this great Uncle Miguel and this thing with this mine or something they had east of Phoenix. So we went out, and I told him, we'll have to look and see if there's anything rings a bell. And he never was able to make it, but I think he had a BMW or an Audi or something. He went out to Fish Creek Hill. I told him, be very careful going down Fish Creek Hill, but get to the bottom and go back into Fish Creek. And I said, tell me if anything just feels familiar about that area. And he did, and he kind of felt like this was a possibility. And I told him, I said, just looking at it, it wasn't really kind of a rough version of the fish map, but I could kind of see some of the contours made more sense than anywhere else. So I told him, I'll let you know if we ever find anything or anything back in there that would kind of bring us back to this. Now, there was another Gonzalez involved in that area, so it made it interesting, but this is much further down the line. So one of the reasons Frank and I, during that first season we were going on YouTube, went down there was I kind of had this in the back of my head, and we had that Bob Ward map. Now, Ward, the guy said about around 1909, he'd been to this place with someone else, and they showed him this stuff. And the Ward story and the map seemed to be similar to what this guy was telling me, who had no knowledge of Bob Ward or any of that stuff at the time. He didn't even know Fish Creek. So when we went out, we went looking and found where there was some low-grade silver and stuff like that. And it kind of tied into this. Now, we were never able to find a spot that matched Ward or anybody else's story of this ledge or this open ledge area that had a mine in it. Now, in each case, and in Michael's case, it was similar to Ward's stories. You could look down the shaft, but it was collapsing in. But it didn't tell you whether it was a vertical shaft or anything horizontal. So it was hard to understand in the description what we were looking for. Did it go down under the ledge? Was it just above it into the mountain? Or was it something up on a ledge where it was more of a pit kind of going down in the gold? The last I'd heard from Michael was he had it assayed, he had it checked. It was like something like 80-85% silver. It had a certain percentage copper and a bit of gold in it. Which was kind of odd, because the one thing Frank and I did not find on that north side in that area where we found the silver, and there was copper. There's copper in those canyons there. I will verify that. We never found any trace of gold whatsoever going through that specific area. So I don't know how the stories all lined up, but there are more than one set of Gonzalez's. So I found it a very interesting story. We've kind of sat on years, but we've done enough videos and talked enough about the area. And it's just, we spent a couple years, 2-3 years, seriously looking into that area. And while we found a lot of things, there was an old razor, and there was the pocket watch, and there was a silver dollar, and we did find some low-grade silver. We found enough to intrigue us that there was something back there. It is very sandy, deep sand. There's a number of different small springs. It does stay very damp. I could see where they could use and make that finger bar gold back in there. So everything was relevant possible, and the area is very conducive to it, especially that there's family ties more than once. Again, I don't know what happened to Michael. He was talking for a while. He wanted to make a trip or two out there, but he seemed frustrated because there wasn't anything he could hang his hat on. I don't know if he saw the videos when we were back in there and then kind of went on his own. We never met anyone back there or saw anybody else was attempting anything in there. It could have been further down the canyon where this specifically was. But that's a story. That's the story of Michael Gonzalez. And well met. Would have been especially interesting now with having another Gonzalez story and some other information to meet with him again, and with Trevor or someone or Tyler to be able to interpret the Mexican or Spanish documents and be able to kind of pull it apart a little. Hopefully Michael learned more from me and other things. I turned him on to different books and things, so he learned more to be able to assess it better. But a good chance that when we were in Fish Creek, that was the same thing in all the Gonzalez, whether it's Bob Schuess's Gonzalez map or the other Gonzalez from the AJ area or Michael Gonzalez from New Mexico and Tucson. All the Gonzalez stuff seemed to fit right into that. And I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's just there was something there. Are there a bunch of these silver finger bars buried in there still somewhere or something? John Burbridge found some gold bars, and we know they were a little larger than that, but it could be something similar. So you're back in there, you're metal detecting, you find these little small iron bars or something, or you think it's lead weights or something. Maybe take it down, have it checked out, or even yourself just kind of feel it. If it's super soft and all, you might have found yourself the Gonzalez silver mine. It's somewhere nearby, probably still buried. So there you go for this week. Hope everybody found that one interesting. Back in the superstitions, back to something relevant, ties into everything else for a change. And hopefully we'll be back out there. It'd be great to take a group of people or find someone like Michael to get back in there and kind of take around and look at some stuff, because we have found a lot of things back in there. So I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Hope you enjoy this video and all our others and the lives on Fridays. But until the next time, always remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle, you're not, and this was Chasing Legends.